Our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.
Shows What You Know, the dynamic duo of television podcasts, your television podcast. I'm Jim from Las Vegas, and I'm always joined by
Jakob from Sweden, but lives in Ireland. People are confused about it. Pretty straightforward. Had to make the rhyme work. My friend actually sent a little audio message of his kid singing this, and he sang it wrong. He said, Jim from... He was like, Jakob from Las Vegas and Jim from Sweden. I wish I'd pulled that up, actually, so we could play it now. But shout-outs to Michael and, more importantly, Aina for that rendition. We're back, episode 5 of the reboot. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good. We're still living in TV. I mean, we got a cornucopia of TV shows. There's almost too much TV to watch these days. So yeah, we're gonna break down some news for you. We're gonna get into what we've been watching, and then we're gonna talk about the recent Disney Plus Star Wars live action release, The Acolyte. We got all that and more. But before that, Jacob, we got something in the mailbag? We got some email came through.
We did. You can email us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. And Ryan R. sent us a message saying, hey there, this is a Jim and Them listener and a new Shows What You Know fan, Teterboro. Listening to, I don't know what that is. Listening to episode 4.
I mean, it's a long story, but I mean, the Teterboro is like an airport. It's like a airport here in the U.S., and I believe that's his goon name. So... That fills in the blanks a little bit.
My goon name is Moondoggy. That's right. In the Jim and Them fandom, we have nicknames. Find it all at jimandthem.com. Listening to episode 4, you guys talked a lot about D&D, and it sounds like Jakob really enjoys that type of content. I myself am a very big fan of Jim and his other co-hosts' improv skills. Why don't you guys consider putting together a D&D improv campaign? Jakob will probably be a great DM for this, and Jim, Mike, who I know has a lot of D&D experience, maybe Kristen even, or anyone who would like to be part of this. Could be a fun thing to listen to. Love the new reboot of SWYK. Yeah, Jim, what do you think?
I mean, I've said, I've never actually played D&D proper. I mean, we've done little like mini games where it's like supposed to be D&D. So, I mean, I'm down for it. It just, I mean, it depends on if people wanted to hear that. It sounds like at least one person does. So I wouldn't say no. But I mean, what do you think? How much work does it have being a dungeon master?
I mean, it's a passion project. Any dungeon mastering, regardless of whether you record it or not. But I have actually made a show like this before. The reason none of you have heard about it is I never fucking released it because I'm such a like tinkerer and perfectionist. Yeah. So I have 20 plus episodes of a TTRPG podcast called Dice and Decisions, and now and again I Google it to see has someone else snagged that name because it's a pretty good name. But yeah, I think recorded from like 2017, something along that. Like that's kind of when we were recording it, and it's very good. And eventually I'll release it at awesomepedia.org. But it's not gone out yet because apparently I just wanna find the perfect music backing track. I'll get around to it one of these days, and I'll release it. So a lot of tinkering involved potentially, but doing a D&D show with you and the crew is would probably be like a childhood dream come true for me. So keep it on the table. There is a slight drawback in that we are in extremely different time zones. So that's kind of it's hard enough to get people in a room to play D&D, never mind get them in a room to record a podcast, or a virtual room as the case may be. So a few potential snags, but something I would definitely enjoy.
Yeah, we should maybe we'll do like a test run. How do you do like a mini game of D&D? Can you do just like a pilot? Is that what it's called?
We call it a one shot. Yeah, we got all the terminology. Maybe we should do this. This is a great email. You can email us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. Thank you for that. We'll take it under consideration.
So real quick then, for a one shot, like, Do people do that as a test, as like a chemistry test? Like, do we? I mean, I know we're friends in real life, but do we jive well in the D&D realm?
I mean, probably in the world of actual play, it's kind of weird to me because I've always played games first, and when I've recorded, like the show I recorded was the three people I'd known the longest in the world, and we've played the game a million times, so it was more like we have a good vibe. Let's capture that and make a thing out of it that other people might enjoy. But I do, because actual play has gotten so big, I do know that people like will market themselves as like, I'm a dungeon master, and like, or I'm a this type of player, and then like put together crews where the goal is to create content, and then they might do that type of thing for sure.
All right. Well, before we turn into a D&D podcast, I'm going to move right along to the TV news. One quick thing I wanted to bring about. I'm still aghast that we don't have a jingle yet, because we're pretty well jingle people, but we're keeping the news nice and pure. We're not getting caught up in all that the drama, the theatrics for our news. I mostly wanted to bring this up just because I'm a huge Paul Giamatti fan. Jacob, did you see The Leftovers that came out? Well, I don't know if it came out in Europe or around the holidays, but came out around Christmas time here in the States. It was nominated for an Oscar, starring Paul Giamatti. Takes place in the 70s. Did you see it?
No, so you don't mean... Oh, sorry. No, The Leftovers. I did see that. I thought you meant the TV show. I guess it's...
I mean, The Holdovers. I'm stupid. You're right. I said the wrong title. The Holdovers is the movie. So, yeah, I said it wrong.
I did see The Holdovers, yes.
I loved it. It was my movie of the year for 2023. And I loved all the award build-up with Paul Giamatti just being the best guy in all his interviews. I think he won a Golden Globe. Then he went to In-N-Out Burger, which is becoming kind of a hack thing to do. But when he did it, it was awesome. But anyways, I do remember in a lot of these, in one of these build-up to the award show, like red carpet interviews or something, they asked him, like what kind of, what kind of project is he looking for? And he did specifically say that he was looking for a horror project. Let me see. I think I have the quote here. Because he mentioned that. Oh yeah, here he goes. Yeah, he was fresh off his Golden Globe win. He was telling reporter that that he really wanted to be in a horror project, and his favorite horror movie is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I feel like Eli Roth must have got wind of this, because Hostel is kind of whatever. It feels like it's very much a time and place. It was very well, go ahead.
Let me interrupt you just because. Okay, so I got a bit confused with The Leftovers and The Holdovers and the whatnots.
I'm sorry,
but you're saying there's a Hostel TV show and Paul Giamatti's in it. That's the news.
Yes, that the only news about it so far is that Paul Giamatti has signed on to star in the television adaptation of Hostel. If you're not familiar, Hostel is mid 2000s in the torture porn craze at the time, where between like the Saw movies and then Hostel was a big one. The basic conceit is Americans traveling Europe get tricked to go into like Eastern Europe, where they're then kidnapped and tortured by rich people. Like, rich people want to feel something, and the only way for them to feel something is to torture people and murder them. Yes. So they are describing this as a reinvention for a more modern age, I suppose. Because I guess you could say that the original series plays more into like Americans have this fear of like traveling worldwide because they're like, oh my God, the world hates us. And we don't know what to do. We don't speak other languages. Most of us don't even have a passport. So then you watch Hostel as well. It's like, that's going to happen to me. I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to be tortured. Meanwhile, the world's like, we can't go to America. They all have guns. They have huge machine guns everywhere. And I can't go there. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe we're going to work to break down some of these barriers with the new Hostel TV show starring Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, Paul Giamatti doing horror, I mean, him doing anything really is, like, you could have told me he's starring in a new TV show that's XYZ, like almost anything, and I'd be like, okay, cool. So, yeah.
I guess what I imagine, again, I don't know anything about this. They've only mentioned that Giamatti is tied to it. Is they'll probably focus on the torture aspect, But it feels like the very now thing to do with something like this is the class, the whole class war aspect of it. Because, with things like Squid Game and stuff like that, it's similar where it's like rich people, using us poor paupers as entertainment. So I think they would focus more on the idea of whatever this rich underground syndicate is and how they're profiting and pleasuring off of our suffering, off of regular people's suffering.
Which
At
is
least,
the plot, like the original
yeah,
plot, right? Like I
yeah.
can't say like I'm familiar with it, but I don't even know if I've seen it at this stage. I feel like I did, but maybe I just saw a Saw film and was confused. I don't really remember Hostel, so but it's in there, like that's in the plot. So yeah, definitely
Yeah.
timely, no less timely now than then. So and more of a hot topic. Yeah, we got to make something about how capitalism's bad because it is. So yeah, could be, and everyone hates billionaires, right? Except the people sucking billionaires' dicks. So you know.
And
There's something there.
I suppose you'd have to assume that Giamatti is not. Well, I mean, I guess there's a chance he's cast as some sort of aloof man that gets kidnapped and tortured, but I'd have to assume he would play a devilish rich billionaire that is torturing other people, and we're rooting for him to get his comeuppance in the end. I'd have to imagine.
He could definitely do that very well.
Yeah.
I'm sure he could also do a very like I've been put in a horrible situation and I'm freaking out about it, and then like maybe thinks he's escaping but finds out it's all part of the plan. Like him being mad in general is good. So there's a lot to work with there. I'm sure. We don't know when this is coming out or anything. We just know it's happening, right?
Yeah, the only thing we know is that he signed on to Star. They don't have like a distributor or like a network or anything attached to it, but it is the studio behind it is Fifth Season, which is the same studio that worked on Severance, the studio behind Severance. So that kind of, I love Severance, so it feels like there's a good pedigree behind it at least. So at least good signs. I mean, last week I was going on and on about how 300 is such a cash-in IP nonsense, and this is similar, but at least when you read like some names behind it, you don't immediately, like, it's still a little eye-rolly, but you don't immediately, at least personally, I don't immediately shrug it off.
Yeah. Sounds fairly promising, and I might move us to another item of news because Fifth Season is actually also the production company behind Tokyo Vice, and this week we had the news that officially Tokyo Vice is wrapped up. They did 2 seasons and they're done. The headline in Variety is Tokyo Vice cancelled by Max after 2 seasons. So they're saying basically the Max original programming chief said that this decision was something that was planned as sort of a storytelling arc. JT Rogers, I guess the creator, was also like, yeah, it was a mutual decision to support the storytelling, and indeed, without any spoilers, it kind of makes sense. I don't even know if it's officially a cancellation, as it says in, like, do you call it a cancellation if it's just like it was just kind of done?
Yeah.
But then the creators also said that they hope to maybe make some more Tokyo Vice at some point. It's a bit of a I'm not going to say wishy-washy statement, but it's like, okay, so are you done or are you not done? But they're keeping the door open anyway. They said specifically, over the last 5 years, Max has made sure we got to tell our story. They've supported us through thick and thin. Not only did they give us these 2 seasons, they said yes when we asked to end season 1 with a series of cliffhangers, and they said yes when we asked for 2 extra episodes so we could land the plane in the way JT had always envisioned. We're grateful not only to Max, but to our partners Fifth Season, who sold the show around the world, made it a global success story. They were in the trenches with us always, guaranteeing that we could make the show we wanted to make. The response from the press and fans, particularly for season 2, has been overwhelming. It's thrilling to find out how many viewers have engaged with these characters and how they're clamoring for more. And so, yeah, apparently JT Rogers has expressed a hope for some future of the series, saying there's a thread for all the main characters and that the story is on paper, but for now at least Tokyo Vice is wrapped up.
Yeah, that does sound like a just like a nice way to not really burn a bridge. Like, I mean, I'm sure they are appreciative, like, hey, because I'd always heard about the show, but I never heard a ton of people in my orbit that were watching it.
Hmm.
I've always heard good things though, and like I've been mentioning, I've been meaning to check it out. But this is also based off a book or like a real guy's life, correct?
Correct. A book that I have also read. But it's kind of like it's not that like there's no one-to-one relationship. It's more like
Okay.
the vibe of the book is translated into a much more heightened version of that in the film or
Okay, because that was going to be my
filmatization.
question. Like, if it was an adaptation, if it wrapped up the book, but you're saying it kind of isn't really about that. It's more just the
Yeah.
vibes. Okay. All
Unlike
right.
Shogun, this is very much like the show is already bigger and more bombastic than what's in the book because everything in the book is supposedly true. You know, from
Mm,
it's a memoir, right? So he's kind of there's bits in there and there's details and there's like something that's significant in the story of his life as a reporter is also significant in the story of the show. There's just shitloads more murders and like he's at the in this reporter is involved in all this yakuza drama. Not really the case in this real person's life, but it's kind of a translation that makes sense. You know, it is you do want to heighten it and turn it into something bigger for the big screen or small screen in this case. So there would like unlike Shogun, I'm not like, oh, they finished the book, they can't make more. They could definitely make more. They could definitely like come up with ways to explore these characters further. And the way it ended, I would also say it makes sense to keep the door open because it could definitely be like if this becomes even more popular over time, if it's like there's a call to like, oh, remember Tokyo Vice? That was a great show. I think in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, you could check back in with those characters because the show takes place in the late 90s.
mm.
So you could check in sort of modern day because, like, there's like, you know, no spoiler, but like one character starts out pretty low in the Yakuza, gets pretty high in the Yakuza. So, like, where would he be 10 years later? What type of stories could you tell there? There's definitely more to dig and do there, but clearly they've told the initial story that they wanted to tell, and it does, you know, it come together pretty nicely. But I always felt that it would be I would be very much up for more of that world, that story. So hopefully maybe in the future. But yeah, it feels like this is it for now.
This does totally seem like one of those shows that, you would hear that Max canceled it or whatever, and then, a little while later you hear like, oh, Amazon picked it up or Netflix picked it up or something. It does feel like something they would then shop around. So it'd be interesting to see if they do that. Because initially, when I saw this, I was like, "Oh, that means maybe I'll never check that out." But now, hearing you talk about it, and at least hearing that it does kind of come to, it's not like a complete, like you're left in the dust by the end. At least there's somewhat of a like conclusion. Then I do wanna check it out. Anxiously hoping that it does get maybe picked up by another network or something.
As alluded to in that quote, like if they'd ended it after the first season, it would have been like, fuck. That's like five cliffhangers all at the same time. Like it would have been a horrible way for the show to go out. Season 2 came back and held up. It was just as good as season 1, I think. So definitely a good package to check out. Recommendation for all our listeners as well, as far as I'm concerned.
Excellent. I did want to bring this up real quick, just because I'm a huge fan of the film Man on Fire. I've not read the books. I guess there was two novels, Man on Fire and The Perfect Kill. One came on Man on Fire came on in 81. The Perfect Kill came on in 1992. But I mean, here we go. It's another IP that was a movie that's becoming a series. But Man on Fire is coming to Netflix. Yahya Abdul Mateen is cast as the lead, John Creasy, which I do like this actor a lot. He was in the Aquaman movies, and I believe he was in the new Candyman reboot. I think he was cast in a Marvel series, but I don't know if that's one of those ones that got dropped or whatever. But either way, the main reason why is because I mean, I've mentioned this on my other show, Jim and Them, but I love Man on Fire. But that's the problem with that is I don't know if they're gonna be able to capture the same magic of that film in a series. and especially me because I'm such a big fan of it and Denzel in that movie that it feels like everything's going to pale in comparison. Now, have you seen the film Man on Fire, Jacob?
I have not seen Man on Fire.
It's a classic. I mean, I guess I've also saw this is kind of related almost to, we were talking about Reacher a couple weeks ago, and I did see a recent headline about like the rise of dad TV. And I guess dad TV is really on the come up. Between like Reacher, I just saw they announced some another Prime show starring Jensen Ackles from Supernatural. That's again about like he's a cop, like some crazy murders happen, and he gets recruited to elite special forces that recruit from all different parts of police and military departments, and it's a secret special detective group that has to investigate this garbage. But yeah, whatever it is, it's just, we all want to see these guys out there kicking ass. And Man on Fire, it's the classic trope of Denzel's John Creasy. John Creasy's whole thing is he's like the greatest killer ever. He's like a fixer / I get the job done by any means necessary. But we meet him here at like the end of his life almost, where he's suffering nothing but trauma and PTSD for the life he's led, and he's basically suicidal at this point and has, given up and is ready to go to hell for the most part.
Is he going to do one last job?
Well, he does. Like it does become the one last job, but it's more so he's just doing a job just for money. But the job is he's the bodyguard for a young girl in Mexico where there's like high kidnappings and stuff like that. And her father's like a Mexican national, or it's a very important person. And slowly but surely, this little girl breaks through the hard wall that John Creasy puts up between his self-loathing and his alcohol and his, just suicidal life. She breaks through and he finally cares about something. And you know what happens? She gets kidnapped. And the old John Creasy has to come out because he's going to go fucking find that girl if it's the last thing he does. It's Tony Scott, I believe, for the movie. Let me double check. I don't want to be incorrect.
Tony Scott is the director.
Tony Scott. Yeah, Tony Scott. Because it's Tony Scott, this is like the perfect blend of style and action, because if you watch a lot of the behind the scenes on the film, there's always like 10 cameras going, and the editing's very frenetic, and sometimes you could tell it's clearly like 8mm cameras are shooting this. It's all grainy and fucked up looking, and then he's got other cameras zipping around on dollies and close-ups and zoom-ins and whatever. But it all works so well. So I'm the type of person where I see this, my interest is piqued, but then the other side of me is like, oh my God, I don't know if they're going to be able to live up to the expectations in my mind. And I'm going to watch this and probably hate it, but I'm still going to anxiously await it.
Well, all of that sounds great, but to me, the main selling point of A Man on Fire is going to be the screenplay by Brian Helgeland, creator of A Knight's Tale.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, how could you turn your nose up at that? I'm working on a very in-depth analysis of A Knight's Tale, to the point that I no longer even have any connection to this time period. I'm basically living in the 1300s, Jim. I've gone too deep. I know all about the 100 Years' War. I know all about the fucking knights. I know the everyday life of a knight. And that is all because of Brian Helgeland and A Knight's Tale. Now, keep an eye on my YouTube for an eventual publication of this video I'm working on. But point being, Brian Helgeland, excellent writer, excellent film creator. So I'm going to take that on board as well. Check out Man on Fire. And I assume this is another one where we're pretty early on here, right? So it's not like we don't know when this is coming out. So we'll have to wait and see. But I will watch the film. Although, wait a minute. Have you watched Garth Marenghi? Have we... was my PowerPoint successful at all?
I haven't watched that yet, but I mean, I guess, are we getting into it real quick? Because I do have something to add to that discussion that you just brought up.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Wait, what are we doing?
What TV shows
Oh.
have you been watching?
Now, I have not watched.
Usually, I'll pretend like I don't know what you're doing, and that time I was actually like, "Huh? What?"
Now, I've not watched Garth Marenghi, but I have watched a little show called Game Changers. So that's why I had to get into it a little bit, because it's a little related to what you're talking about. But before I get into that, where were you going with the Garth Marenghi comparison?
I think it was just a sidetrack because I was like, wait a minute, because I was just readily agreeing to watch Man on Fire, and then I was like, oh wait, this relationship needs to be more transactional. I shouldn't just agree to watch something without a tit for tat type situation, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, a quick sidetrack to that too is like, I feel like we bring up movies a lot on our TV show podcast, but clearly from the way the news is, they're so in tandem these days. It's the lines are blurred. TV shows become films, films become TV shows. I mean, we're
Dungeons and Dragons podcasts become TV shows. Yeah.
But yes, I did watch Game Changers, and I'm a little in the middle here. This is not. I don't think this is the show's fault. I think this is my fault. Because what I did, I've only watched one episode so far, but I believe it's the first episode of the newest season. It's the one where you have to be the middle of the road for everything.
Yeah.
Now, I could see that it's an enjoyable show, but coming into something this late, everything is already very, from an outsider's perspective, it feels clicky in a weird way. Because they barely introduce the contestants. I happen to know that the guy on it is the host of Dimension 20 because you had just recently talked about it and used him in the thumbnail of our show. Otherwise, I would have had no idea who he was. Because there's a point where they're giving away like a second edition Lord of the Rings as a prize. And they're like weirdly rubbing it in his face. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't have known what they're doing right now or why everyone's laughing. And it's a little weird. This could just be the American of me, since they don't have a studio audience, it's weirdly silent except them laughing at each other's jokes. And I have to imagine it's what it's like. Maybe, I host a podcast called Jim and Them. If someone turned that on and they don't know us, they're like, what the fuck are these guys laughing at? From an outsider.
Yeah.
From an outsider's perspective, you're like, what the fuck is so funny? Are you kidding?
Who the fuck is Moondoggy?
But I still enjoyed it. But there was definitely some elements that I just felt disconnected or kind of left out only because of that. Just because I'm not as well versed in the Dropout TV universe, which I'm realizing is very much a thing. Because the way they're talking to the other contestants, I feel like they were either a part of other shows or host their own shows on the network.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very... You're correct, and that's very interesting because that's like it is very not insular, but it's like it's a streaming service, and it's a small streaming service, and it's like they don't buy other shows and put them on there, right? Like they make everything in house, and they have a staff of writers and staff of like hosts and people who appear on the shows, and they're often the same people. Like you'll recall from early College Humor days how people would they'd be sketches filmed in the College Humor office, and that was the thing that they were making that was popular. But like they're acting in the sketches and they're writing the sketches and they're kind of like behind the scenes making pitches, and like that was kind of the sense, the sort of, you're kind of part of this fun weird crew if you're following all the different weird College Humor shows. And Dropout is like the evolution of that. So Game Changer is going into like a random episode. Well, I guess not a random one. The first episode of the season 6 or whatever. It's like, I completely understand why you would feel that way, and you are not wrong. I just think maybe I need to give you some recommendations of episodes to go to like see what this has to offer, because I will say as well, I really like Game Changer, big fan of it, especially this last season. But it's definitely like swing and a miss on some of the earlier episodes where it's because they're trying something different every single episode, because the contestants are different, but the contestants are all personalities, so it's not people off the street, they're all people involved in the Dropout universe, right? So you'll have your favorites. I'm always like, oh, Brendan's on this one, Lou's on this one, Grant's on this one, and then maybe I'll skip other ones or check out some where I'm like, I'm not enjoying this one as much. But I feel like the hit ratio has just increased over time as the episodes have gotten more what's the word, not enthusiastic, like they ambitious. Like it's gotten
Sure.
to be really ambitious in what they're trying to do in some of these. So yeah, no, your feelings make sense, and I validate them.
Well, but also it's interesting. It just made me think about this. It's like a human reaction in general because I've had this reaction to people
To
listening
podcast
to,
clips.
yeah, to like personally to my show, Jim and Them, where I don't know what it is about people, but when we hear people we don't know laughing at stuff together and having fun, we're like, who the fuck do they think they are? Like, for whatever reason, we need to be more involved to enjoy it. Whereas initially when you hear just random people having fun with each other, I guess it's
Yeah.
because we feel like we're not involved because again, like it's a big part of podcasts as well. Like you start to build up in jokes and it becomes this like community thing, but you have to be in the community to get it. So when you're outside of it, you're like, well, I don't know about that, so it must be terrible.
Yes, and it's interesting how much inside versus outside things rely on because a lot of you've talked also about like if you're on like we do a podcast, we put clips on our podcast on TikTok, but if you're just swiping through and you see some fuckers doing a podcast, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
swipe on. What are you laughing about? And
Yeah.
like basically I think the human reaction is like you see someone laughing and you're like, well, I wasn't brought along on that journey, so fuck you guys. Because
Hmm.
I'm either stupid because I don't get it, or you're stupid because you're laughing at it, and I'm gonna
Yep.
choose you're stupid every time.
Yep. Yeah. It's just like when like a known stand up can go up and you're just gonna laugh at what they're saying because you know them. But it's weird to think that it's like you got to make that leap from being a nobody. You got to jump over that huge wall of just like gaining the confidence of them just knowing your name. Where all of a sudden, when you're a name person, you could say something not even that funny, but everyone's like, "Well, no, I know you, so that's funny." But
It's
anyways,
like one
that's
of
just
what I'm gonna keep going on this
all
tangent
right.
because
No,
it's
I
an
like it.
interesting, like, weird thing of trying to make stuff online where like you have to bring people along on the journey, and like
Mm,
how you do that is a real art form. It's a lot harder to do that than to make something that is, you can make something that's like not empirically funny, but that's like if people got it, they would think it's really funny. But you and me, we like to make stuff that's very strange. So like on my YouTube channel, like a decade ago at this stage, I was putting up stuff that was like uh making up random TV shows, which is something we also do on Blank Meets Blank, our other podcast, but like making up stuff, random things based on a prompt. And it was me and my friend sitting talking to camera, but like we're like firing on all cylinders. We're going, we're zigging and zanging. And it's like, if you're not coming with us, you're switched off immediately.
mm,
Versus if I'm talking directly at the camera, at least I have your attention for a moment, right? And I can say, welcome, today I'm going to do this. And you're like, okay, this person is talking to me, inviting me in. And then I bring you on the journey. So in a more of sort of vlog type setting, you're able to do that versus, I don't know, if you're getting too jokey too fast, it can turn people off. But anyway, just random
yeah.
thoughts.
No, that I think it's an interesting thing. It's a
Are you
it's
going to
a
watch
push
more
and
Game
pull.
Changer?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna watch more. But yeah, initially there was definitely some like, I was like raising my eyebrows or just kind of like, yeah, okay, what's going on here? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Anyways, Jacob.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Jim, I have been watching a TV show that is a continuation, I guess, of our chat on mockumentaries from weeks and weeks ago. I have been watching What We Do in the Shadows.
Okay, okay.
Now, you may be familiar with it. I don't know, but Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, they created a film, What We Do in the Shadows, which is a mockumentary following a group of vampires. They made it as a film. It's clearly like a pet project of theirs, like a sort of thing that they've done a bunch of different iterations of because they did it on stage back in like the early 2000s. They did a short film in 2005, and then they did a full length sort of indie movie in 2014. That was one of the earlier films from the both of them, I guess. So from that at that stage, Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement of Flight of the Conchords fame. They wrote and made the film together and starred in it. It had a lot of improvised dialogue. They apparently shot hours and hours of improv footage and then cut it down to a reasonable length. But I had always seen clips of this or been vaguely aware of it, but I'd been on the outside. So I was always like, what the fuck is this? Fuck this. Like we just talked about. But for whatever reason, I decided to check it out. And I went to watch the film, and I was actually like, this isn't the thing that I see people clipping all the time on TikTok. This isn't Matt Berry. I love Matt Berry from Garth Marenghi. So I was like, all right, let me check out this TV show. And now I'm on season 3. I watched 2.5 seasons. I'm a good way into What We Do in the Shadows.
To jump in real quick, then, did you finish the film before doing this, or did you just wait? Were you halfway through and just? First of all, I marvel at how you do this. I brought this up before. I brought this up before. How you'll watch a show, and you'll watch 2 seasons and just be like, all right, that's enough of that. But also, I guess that's kind of a good sign for me because I did try to watch the film. This was a while ago. But I couldn't get through it either. And I mean, not to say that it's not even that I thought it was bad or anything. It's just at the time when I was watching it, I was like, I can't watch another mockumentary. The rhythm of it was just too, because this was years ago too. So it wasn't right when that movie came out. It was shortly after. But I just remember watching it. I was like, I just can't watch another. Especially at the time. There was and we mentioned this recently when they were getting more into the Office reboot that's on the way. It's so much mockumentary stuff. The rhythm of it, I could feel it. It wasn't making me laugh. And again, I don't even think it had anything to do with the content. I'm sure the movie's fine and funny or whatever. It's just the format. Because even when David Brent or Ricky Gervais put out a David Brent Office movie not too long ago, or maybe at this point it's probably 5-6 years ago. I watched all of that, but I didn't really like that either. Just again because I just couldn't get into the format. But I've heard nothing but good things about the show. But I only haven't watched the show is because of my experience with the film.
Yeah, no, and I mean, this is my superpower. I was able to turn off the film and I was like, let's check out this TV show. Because I knew there was something there that I thought I would enjoy because I'd seen enough short clips and snippets where I was like, there's something here that's worth, giving a chance. And it's not that I didn't like the film, honestly. It was just like you were saying, but I did turn it off after a while because I was like, I think this is not the version of this story that I want to see. Because it is very much like a retelling, right? As I said, they did it on stage, they did a short film, they did a feature film, and then they did a TV show. And I do think, as someone who didn't finish the film, there's a very different vibe I can imagine to all the other iterations that I haven't watched and to this one. And the TV show is very much... kind of a different beast. It's a lot more polished because it is very much an indie film, right? They've shot it as a mockumentary and it feels very much like a mockumentary. The TV show is more like... it's a bit more polished and they do still have the mockumentary features, but in a sense, it's kind of not making fun of mockumentaries exactly, but members of the mockumentary crew regularly get eaten, or they'll do some really flimsy excuse for why the documentary crew is there. But the whole thing is a documentary about vampires who are living secretly among humans, right? So the whole concept doesn't make any sense to start with. But anyway, if you haven't seen it, haven't heard anything about it, it's about 3 vampires who live on Staten Island. They're very... sort of stuck in their ways from where they the time they came from, but they're also it's basically bad roommates to each other, and it's a lot about how they bounce off each other. There's little bits of vampire lore sprinkled in, but in a way that doesn't feel like, ooh, we're learning about this. It's all very jokey and funny, and I've been enjoying it, to be honest. So I know you don't like Taika Waititi. Has that put you off from checking this out?
Well, that was more of a recent thing when I didn't really like him. Once he started doing Marvel movies, I mean, I loved the Wilder People movie he made. I remember liking Eagle versus Shark way back in the day. I mean, I haven't seen that in over 10 years, but I remember liking that. I loved Flight of the Conchords at the time when that aired. I mean, he didn't do all the episodes, but I know he was like basically involved with it with Jermaine Clement. I at least directed a few, I'd imagine. So yeah, I mean, I didn't like when he did Thor, and then ever since he's done Thor, all his stuff feels a little, annoying. Except, although I didn't mind his other movie, his Hitler movie, which a lot of people did hate.
Jojo Rabbit. Yeah, I like that one as well. Yeah, it's interesting that apparently for the show, Jermaine Clement has more of a sort of neither of them star in it. I mean, they definitely appear in it at different stages, but they're not like starring characters. But Clement has more of he takes more of a lead on the making of the show. He's the creator, since Taika was working on Thor at the time that they were actually starting the TV show. And I was watching some behind the scenes stuff. Apparently, Jermaine is very hands-on and clear about what he wants, versus Taika is more like, throw in random stuff, like, make it weird, let's make it wacky. And it's, you can kind of tell, like, they shot 125 hours of improv footage for the film, and the final film is under 90 minutes, so they managed to cut that down. There is clearly a lot of improv still happening, but I don't know, it feels like a very well molded and put together show. But I think, and also Paul Sims, writer producer of Flight of the Conchords, the show, is also very much involved in this. So I don't know, it's just a good cocktail. It feels like something that I've been aware of and kind of hoped would be good when I eventually got around to checking it out, and I think that it has been. And more importantly, I now know the sources of like 100 TikTok audios, usually Matt Berry. There's so many different ones that just show up there, which I don't know if this is just my For You feed, if you see this as well, but there's audios like, I really am the most devious bastard in New York City. And, how he likes to do silly voices. There's one sound that's like, so someone saying like, I cannot even speak the name of the despicable vampire who did this, and Matt Berry's like, I don't give a fuck, his name was Mike. And like, there's hundreds of videos of people making their own jokes, sort of remixing this and stuff, and just seeing the context of where this came from has been great as well. What We Do in the Shadows, I would recommend it. Definitely a very like chilled out kind of show to watch. Like, you could just sort of put it on. It's a great show to hang out and have some laughs to. Nothing too serious, silly vampire fun.
Yeah, no, I've heard good things. I mean, I've also heard good things about Taika's other show, Our Flag Means Death. I believe that's what it's called, but I haven't watched that either.
I did see the first season. I didn't check back in on season 2. Definitely a weird universe to try to get back into. I feel like I need to rewatch season 1 to be in the mood to watch season 2, because it's such it's about pirates, which is obviously going to be a hit for me. I have somewhere around here, I have a book on pirates, pirate history. So yeah, I liked Our Flag Means Death season 1, but when I started season 2, I was like, what the fuck? But that's a feeling I have with a lot of shows these days. When it's 2 or 3 years between seasons, you're like, what was I doing? What is happening?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that does sound good. I might have to take a look at it.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Jacob, we're not talking about reality shows enough anymore, in my opinion. I did watch a little show that premiered on Netflix. I've only watched one episode so far. A little show called Perfect Match, Jacob. I don't know if you've heard of this show, but Perfect Match takes reality stars reality stars from other Netflix shows like The Circle and Love is Blind. And I guess there's a show called Dated and Related, which I'd never heard of, which I thought was an incest show. I was like, there's no way they've done an incest show. But no, it's like, you go on dates, but you take your brother with you, and your brother is like, I don't know if he's judging the date or trying to hook up with the person as well or something. I don't know.
Okay.
But this is very reminiscent of old Challenge. The MTV's The Challenge, which everyone knows I love The Challenge, mixed with, I guess, like a Temptation or Love Island type deal. Like, the basic conceit is they start with a bunch of guys and gals from, again, these other shows. They put them in a house. And the first thing they have to do is find their match. They have to team up with someone else. So Like they're going around trying to like hook, like it's like there's the innuendo is crazy because of course it's like, are they going to hook up? Do they love each other? So they'll like a guy will pick a girl pick a guy, whatever. They have to team up. Then the next day they go and do a challenge. Although when they team up, they do make it seem like, are they going to go have sex now in this room? Because they all go into the room together and put like occupied on the door. And it's like, are they having sex? Some of them probably are. Then they do a challenge. The first challenge they did, again, with all this innuendo, is they're in this little like, there's this cage type thing that's can hold two people, and they're above the water on this beam. They're like out over the water on this beam, and they have to maneuver that cage back to the deck. But to do that, they have to like thrust. You know what I mean? So they're just like thrusting at each other to move it across the beam. And whoever can do it first, that they become like the top couple or whatever. And then you get to go into a room. The top couple goes into a room, and you could pick. They have other people laying in wait from other reality shows.
What?
And you
Sorry, they're ambushed in the.
Oh, no,
already a lot.
Yeah, no, it's so convoluted. It's so complicated. The literal people are not there. It's like a D&D board, if you will, Jacob.
All right.
So
now
they're looking
my language.
Yeah, they're looking down on a board that has people's faces and their names, and it's other characters from shows, and you can pick them to bring into the house. Your goal is to try to break up the other couples. So you'll be like, oh, Willie from The Circle, he might be great for Brittany, who's teamed up with Mark or whatever. And so when you bring them in the house, you send them on a date with a new person. This is so complicated. Even
How
trying
do you
to
win this? Do you find true love and that's how you win, or is it like you have to like? Is it a kind of Survivor style? Couples are eliminated, or
it's weird because I think you get eliminated. Like, oh yeah, the way like I've only watched one episode, so they haven't gotten to elimination yet. But the way you get eliminated is being like the odd person out. So I guess eventually it will come to a point where, like, say you and Brittany teamed up, but then they brought in Mark, and then Brittany likes Mark more and decides to team up with him, and now you don't have a partner, you're out of the house. So it's like, it probably does feel pretty shitty.
Yeah.
But it's weird because the contestants are talking like they're going to find love, but it really... This makes no sense on, I guess not many romantic shows really make sense on finding love. But this one especially, because it's like this convoluted game of, you know, partnering with someone, winning a challenge with them. So sometimes you might just pick someone because you're like, well, this person's going to be better in challenges. But then the undercurrent is supposed to be, yes, like you're going to be a perfect match and find love at the end. So now, does this sound enticing to you, Jacob?
I mean, obviously not. But if I can say what you said about what we do in the shadows, like, oh yeah, I'll have to check that out, and then just never watch it. You know, I could do that. But I'll be honest and say no. I did Google it because I was like, what's the log line? Like, how are they like? What you just said barely makes sense. But how do you sell this in like 1 minute? I guess like it's contestant from other. Are they all from other reality shows?
I've only seen, the only show I've watched is Love is Blind, and there's like 2 or 3 people from Love is Blind so far, but they might be waiting in the wings because, again, they're going to bring people in throughout the season.
Okay. So even just reading like the summary is it's pretty long, but yeah, so it's contestants from other Netflix reality shows pair up and compete in challenges. As they compete to form relationships, the most compatible couples will play matchmaker, breaking up other couples and sending them on dates with brand new singles they'll invite to the villa. Okay. I mean, so there's 2 seasons. So the thrusting challenge was the main one. How are they all like sex jokes? Are all the challenges sex jokes? Do you know?
I assume they are. I didn't watch the first season. I started watching just this season because I saw that Izzy from Love is Blind and Micah from Love is Blind were on it. So I was curious. So we'll see how it goes. I'm a big reality.
See, and they keep rematching with other people. I'm sort of looking at a breakdown here on Wikipedia. I get it. And so people are from Too Hot to Handle, Dated and Related, The Mole 6, Love is Blind 5, Squid Game, The Challenge. All things I've never watched. Yeah.
Squid Game, the challenge is legit good, though. I don't care what
Yeah,
anyone says.
Okay. And that's like them making a game show out of Squid Game, the game show criticism of capitalism sort of thriller.
Which
right?
I
But
get.
they're like, let's make it real, but not murder.
I
Yeah.
get it. I was you once. I get that's the snooty answer. That's what everyone says on Twitter as well. Like, oh, apparently they didn't get Squid Game. And it's like, yeah, we know. We know, dude. We all know. But no, the show itself does legit, like, the personal stories on the show actually work really well. As far as
But
as
nobody
you get,
dies, right?
No, but it is pretty funny that they have to pretend they die.
Okay.
Like
I mean,
like a squib will go off in their shirt,
Ah.
and they have to fall on the ground and act like they died.
that is pretty good. And it would make sense that it's called Squid Game, almost more so than in the actual Squid Game. But no, I mean, I make the obligatory comment, but I do understand why. Like this show Squid Game, the original show, like the fun of it is in large part seeing people compete in these challenges, right? So why would you not take those and make real people do it, but without the murder, ideally? So no, that's the one I would be most interested in out of all the ones I just read out. Maybe because it's not a romance one, also. So
Yeah, but anyways, perfect match. And yeah, I mean, I guess we could just move on. We could move on to what we've both.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Now, we both have watched the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte, the latest Star Wars Disney Plus show. We're on the cusp of the 3rd episode. We haven't watched that yet. We'll discuss it. We'll do a quick overall discussion without any spoilers. Then we'll warn you before we get into any actual spoilers if we do. Overall thoughts, what do you think on Star Wars The Acolyte, Jacob?
Yeah, it's pretty good. That's like my overall. Yeah, it's promising, but also could turn out being terrible. You know, it's there's still that potential, but it's not obviously terrible, which makes it better than most Star Wars media new Star Wars media that I've consumed recently. That's my quick take.
I'm almost in like complete agreement with you. Like I wanted to just start off to be like, we're doing a detriment to our own show by having this opinion. We're doing a detriment to our YouTube TV podcast because the only way to get views is we have to be like, The Acolyte is the greatest Star Wars media we've seen since the original trilogy, or we have to say The Acolyte is woke trash with no white men on it. Like, those are the only ways to get views, and we're not doing either of those.
I know.
I do think it's completely fine. The action is good, which is nice because I don't feel like the Disney Plus shows have really given us good action almost at all. Like, even Mandalorian's had some good moments, but I like their, like, I guess, lack of a better comparison, kind of almost like Crouching Tiger style, like kind of kung fu movie action that seems well shot and well choreographed. I was excited. Everyone knows I was excited for Carrie-Anne Moss, and I think they banked on that. Oh, actually, I won't even get into it. I'll have to save that.
Yeah,
but anyway.
yeah. I guess it's a whole genre of films, wuxia films that are like, you know, the ones leading up to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is what we would know in the West and probably like the most popular in the genre, but, you know, associated with a lot of wire work and kung fu, flying around shit, which actually makes a lot more sense in Star Wars than a lot of like in you know, a historical setting or whatever. It makes sense that they'd be able to do all this bullshit that they can do, and I agree, the fight scenes are pretty good.
Yeah, I guess my only and again, this is probably more of a personal thing than it is about the show. Like, I'm not really putting this on the show. It's just, even though I'm a big Star Wars fan, it something has to be kind of almost exceptional for me to be excited about it. Like Andor, I feel like was exceptional, so that got me more excited. Acolyte, it's good. It's definitely better than pretty much any other of the streaming shows that I've seen or a lot of stuff they've put out. but there's part of me, and this is kind of was my reaction to the House of Dragon, which I have to maybe give another chance to. But there's part of me I was like, well, who cares? You know, it's like they got lightsabers and they're fighting. Who really cares? Now, I know that sounds very dismissive and shitty, but I swear I'm not trying to be. Because people tout this show as like not needing to have any prior knowledge of Star Wars to watch it. I would say that's not quite true. I get what they mean in the grand scheme of things. You don't have to know about, I guess Luke or whatever. You don't have to know like specific characters, or like the Mandalorian might reference more direct things from the films, or especially the Mandalorian started getting really bogged down with like Filoni stuff from Rebels or Clone Wars or something. I get that you don't need to know that, but like I feel like if you had no idea what Star Wars was at all, like literally, you'd go into this and be like, well, wait, who is that? Why do they do that? Why do I care about this? And that's kind of where
that's it. What you were saying, like you don't need to know it to watch it and to like understand it, but you may need some of that outside reason to care, right?
Perfect. That's what I'm getting at.
Thinking a similar thing, like when we'll get into the plot after the spoiler warning, but short, like to very briefly describe it, it takes place 100 years before Star Wars Episode 1. It features a Jedi Master who's investigating a series of crimes in relation to a former Padawan, and we'll just leave it at that before the spoilers, I guess. But when they cut to Coruscant and all the Padawans are just meditating, and you're like, oh, I've seen this many times.
Yes.
And someone does like an ominous like vision, and Lee Juan Jay, is that how you pronounce his name? Squid Game related, because one of the main actors in this is the main character in Squid Game, who is now, I guess he's appeared in a lot of things, but the Squid Game is really where he came to international prominence. And it's cool that he's like, I guess I'm gonna be a Jedi Master now in a 100+ million Disney show. Why not? He's good in it, but he's also like, I am the good Jedi Master and my feelings are detached. And we've only seen 2 episodes, but like, I would have liked, without getting into it, to see more of Carrie-Anne Moss, in this maybe than we've gotten to see so far. And I'm just like, I kind of am bored with the archetypes. I am interested when things step outside of those archetypes, which they do a little bit. But it's a mystery show. It's kind of a thriller show. You're kind of going to have to put the pieces together alongside these characters. And that sets us up for a potential for things to be really shitty or just kind of average towards the end. It could be a smash, like, wow, they really pulled it together. But there's a fair few moments already. And these 2 episodes are not that long. They're like, 40 minutes or something like that. There's already been some moments where I'm like, does that make sense? And I'm like, does it not make sense because there's going to be a twist later? Or does it not make sense because they just kind of decided to do something this way to make it like convenient? And like, I don't know the answer to that question yet. And I think that upcoming reveals will really determine our judgment on this show. It's kind of too early to say. But with that said, the fact that it's all too early to say, and we've watched 2 episodes for a Star Wars show, that's great. That's like one of the most positive reviews you could give.
No, I agree. It definitely puts it ahead of the pack. It's I'm still excited to watch it, and it is like you're getting bonus points for just being baseline good so far. So, that is a plus. But it is going to be I'm in complete agreement. It's going to be highly dependent on how this mystery box that they're setting up plays out. Because if it's if it's a letdown, it's going to sour the hope you have at the beginning here. And that's the tough thing, because mystery, like, and this isn't just Star Wars. This is just, we've seen shows like this, like all the Lost clones and stuff like that. It's great when you can come up with an intriguing hook for any type of narrative, whether it be a comic book, TV show, movie. the hard part, and it's so hard, is really being able to deliver on that. Because don't get me wrong, I love coming up with a cool puzzle, but it's so tough to really kind of fulfill that promise. And you're right. The other side of it is just that, like, it's good that it's Star Wars, but we are seeing so much of familiar Star Wars. We have maybe a shadowy villain with a deep voice. We have the Jedi Council, which is very reminiscent of the prequels, but like that's the worst Jedi Council. Like I don't like that. So, but yeah. Well, anyways, I guess that's kind of our basic thoughts. Should we get into it? Should we get a little bit more into it here?
Before we do, I want us to comment on what you said, like that you either have to love or hate this show. I spend a lot of time, even though I discuss TV with you online, I'm detached from a lot of the what would you call it?
Like the online discourse?
The discourse, that's it. Yeah, I'm detached from it. And every time I dip into it, I'm like, what the fuck? Are people insane? People are insane. They love to take media franchises and then just go like, this looks like a political tool. Let me just turn this into a political thing for some reason. And the reason I fell into that rabbit hole was when I was looking into it, like, okay, the Acolyte's out. Let me see if reviews are very positive or negative. And I searched it and I'm like, okay, critics seem pretty positive. IMDb 4.5 out of 10 due to review bombing and like people who really hate that. Yeah, as you alluded to, there's a black Jedi. And I'm like, do you guys not see how you sound like Nazis? Like, it's such a fucking, I don't know. Especially with Star Wars, it's one thing that puts me off the whole fandom and the whole culture around it is that it seems to be one of the most toxic ones, because like everything that's been going on in the last decade with, there have been movies released that haven't been very good. There have been movies released that were pretty good, but like just the backlash, especially things related to race and gender, I'm just like, what? How, like, could you not actually have a conversation about this that's about the shortcomings in the media and not about like, whatever your weird political opinions are? I don't know. It's just, I just had a bit of a shock when I looked into it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is why you shouldn't try to talk about. This is why Star Wars I would never say I'm a Star Wars fan these days. This is why if I had a tattoo of Star Wars, which I don't, I'd be embarrassed about it, because it was. Whoa. At one stage, it was just kind of a cool thing you could like from your childhood. And then people turned it into some sort of, I don't know how it's kind of like my home country of Sweden, where if Sweden's ever referenced in the US, it's always as a political sort of battering ram. It's always like, I met someone, we're way on a tangent now, but I met someone on a walk here in Ireland and just kind of mentioned how I was from Sweden. And there's like such a low barrier for white men, if you're a white man, to get just quite weird and racist with you. I know they do this obviously with people of other races as well. That's kind of the whole racism thing, right? But like, he was very quickly about, oh yeah, there's a lot of sexual assault. Isn't it terrible with all these foreigners coming into our country? Because he's been consuming all this media about that, where my home country is used as a battering ram of like, Sweden let in immigrants and now Sweden is terrible. So we need to, like, this needs to be a battering ram in discussions, in political debates. And I'm like, it's a country. There's 10 million of us, a lot of different cultures and things happening. That's all you know because that's all you're told. And it feels like Star Wars, in a very similar sense, is just used for people to have arguments about their weird politics rather than actually talking about the thing. And then critics overcompensate and they're like, oh yeah, it's amazing. What an amazing show. And I'm like, is it? Is it though? Can we not talk about the fucking show? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, but also kind of, to be fair, where a lot of that stuff birthed from is that there was, I shouldn't even say was, there's still elements of it now, is properties were coasting off of just being like, we cast a lady, isn't this great? And like didn't do anything else to like make a good thing. And so it did give rise to this, like, I guess, dark side, if you will, of like whether it be YouTubers or podcasters or whatever that kind of pounced on that, and that's become their business. to point out all of the whether it be just diversity or whatever, because it's like I don't know. I guess it's what's the adage where it's like you could either have something like good, cheap, or fast, and it's like you can never have all three. Like you can only have two of those. There was like a similar thing where it's like we could either have a lady lead and we just use that as a culture war to like push our product, or we could have a lady lead and make it good. It was like a weird like that they never came together for the most part. So yeah, it just built this thing of like, especially you're right, Star Wars. Well, Marvel's a big time as well, where that's become, because there's like elements of this show where I could imagine they were like, we don't want any white men in this show. And I don't really have a problem with it, but I could imagine there was probably a discussion where they're like, don't show any white guys, because there's like 2 white guys in the whole show. But then the problem with that is that does give it like weirdly gives ammo to like Force Fucker 92 on YouTube that has 1 million subscribers, because he's just talking about how like they're taking our Star Wars away. Don't you see what they're doing? They're taking our Star Wars away. So
I think that's, as you said, the fact that they've made it their business as well, and that's like. It's like algorithmically driven, right? Divisive things get more attention, so you have to be at one extreme or the other. And meanwhile, I'm just here trying to watch some people do kung fu with lightsabers, and I want to enjoy that. But anyway, I just had to do a bit of a rant about it because I had such a like I guess not shock because I'm fucking used to it, but just like, oh yeah, this is why I never. Like besides the fact that Obi-Wan the TV show, everyone just said it was horrible, but like I've tapped out of the Star Wars ecosystem, and it seems like it's been a good decision so far. But anyway, will we get into spoilers?
Well, yeah, because one other thing, they one of the big things I saw, they were attacking that actor that plays is it Yord, I believe, the Jedi Yord.
Yeah.
As I guess he was in an interview and he happened to, I mean, maybe he either didn't know or he misspoke, but he answered a question and he brought up how Anakin destroyed the Death Star. And everyone's like, Anakin did not destroy the Death Star. Luke destroyed the Death Star, you fucking piece of shit. Like, how dare you be in Star Wars? And like, honestly, who cares? Who cares if I'm sure he probably knew, but like you're doing interviews all day. And he just like misspoke or whatever. They have stupid well, Anakin's a stupid name. Luke's more of a normal name. But yeah, it is funny because you're right. There are these things that people latch onto to quote like, this is not for the fans. But also, I don't want fans, for the most part, to be making stuff. Like, the guy that made Andor is not a Star Wars fan. And it's all the better for
good.
it.
It's great. He's a fan of good stories. And
like,
so he made a good story in Star Wars.
Like, there should be someone there that, like, if you're making something that's more serialized, obviously, there should be someone that knows, oh, don't do this, do this.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, just try to tell a good story. But you're right. I mean, this is the Star Wars thing. You can't talk about just the property. You do have to talk about the culture around it and, how it came to be and what the discourse is. Because, otherwise you're just us and we kind of like, hey, this could be good. And everyone's like, how dare you? It's the greatest thing ever. Or how dare you? It's the fucking worst thing ever.
Are you saying you're part of the Yord Horde?
Yeah.
Which is an actual thing that I found. But I think people are memeing because surely no one likes that. Like, the character is made to be not very likable. And I think the actor does that pretty well. But it's just funny. I was trying to find news articles actually about, like, theories or stories about the thing. But I just saw a bunch of tweets of people memeing Yord, calling themselves the Yord Horde. But which could also be overcompensating because, like, fuck Yord. Who gives a shit about Yord, you know?
Well, there is a meme around his hairstyle because that's kind of like a go-to hairstyle. Like,
the mandatory black character hairstyle, yes.
Yeah, like Miles in Spider-Man 2 has it, the PlayStation 5 game. And then there's a bunch of other references. I saw someone sharing it because they're like, this fucking hairstyle won't go away. And there's a meme around I think it's in a lot of video games because I think it's kind of like it's a go-to like create a character hairstyle you could pick. But
I saw someone theorize that basically after Killmonger in Black
That's what
Panther
it was,
had that
Killmonger.
hair.
Yeah.
It's like people who don't know about black hair were like, that's the cool black haircut. Let's give it to all of our characters moving forward. Anyway.
Yeah, let's get a little bit more into it. Here we go.
Ayo, this is AI generated bullshit. AI generated bullshit by AI Jakob. Here we go. Spoiler alert, we're gonna spill the beans. No turning back, no living in your dreams. We'll reveal secrets and we'll blow your mind. Darth Vader was dead the whole time. And in The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis was that kid's dad. Dumbledore killed Snape, made all the kids sad. Man, you can't control these spoiler bars. And the planet of the apes was actually Mars.
Welcome to the spoiler zone, everybody.
Yes. As you know, whenever you hear that, the spoiler zone is now upon us. So was it supposed to be a twist? I mean, was it a twist that it wasn't her, that she had a twin?
I think for our listeners' benefit, if you haven't seen it, but you're like, okay, give me spoilers on the first 2 episodes to get a bit more detail. Well, let's go through some of the beats and we can get into it, right? So
Sure.
What we start with a murder. We start with a pretty badass, cool fight scene.
Right.
Where we have a character showing up and attacking Carrie-Anne Moss and saying, like, attack me with all your strength. Very anime kind of line. But an assassin showing up to a bar and going, like, fight me, motherfucker. And Trinity from The Matrix is like, all right. And they do a bunch of flips and shit, and it's pretty badass. And then the assassin manages to kill Carrie-Anne Moss, which is a little disappointing because obviously she's part of, like, the marketing of the show. Big reason why some folks might have been excited about it. She's great in it. It's also very much a move people do these days of casting someone and then killing them off in the first scene. She's definitely going to come back in flashbacks or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, disappointing in that we lost her as part of the show, but also very good opening scene, I thought.
I agree. Yeah, that we were kind of hinting at that with the Carrie-Anne Moss casting and how that plays out. I do like what it hints at because, they're hinting at some sort of, dark secret that the Jedi Council's holding that's involved with the this Force user assassin that we see that does kill Carrie-Anne Moss. But then we meet with, I guess, which is essentially becomes her twin. As she's a mechanic on a ship. I forget what they call it, like a mechtor or something like that.
Yeah, mechnek.
Mechnek, there you go.
But yeah, so we have May is the name of the character who kills Carrie-Anne Moss, and then Osha is May's sister, supposedly. But yes, to answer your question of like, is this supposed to be a reveal? We start with that, then we cut to like a spaceship. What looks like this same person is kind of waking up or whatever, going through her day, and someone asks like, "What you do this weekend?" And she's like, "I'm not telling you shit, motherfucker," or something along those lines. And we're like, wait, is this the same person? She has slightly different hair. And then it's kind of revealed throughout the course of episode 1 that there were 2 twins that were rescued from some horrible event, a fire. And, one of them died. One of them died, and the other one was rescued, became a Padawan for the Jedi Council, left the Jedi Council, and now these murders are starting to happen, and it seems like it's her twin sister out there murdering people. So May is the Sith-looking lady, the person who's going around doing assassinations. Osha, meanwhile, is not able to call upon the Force very easily, and has kind of left that life behind, but is drawn back into it to investigate whether her sister is alive and out there murdering people, because this is episode 2 stuff, I guess, but she believes that her sister is the one that killed her family and everything like that in a big fire. But the hint is that it seems like the Jedi were involved, responsible, they were the cause of May and Osha's family's death, most likely. That's kind of the hint. But this is the mystery box we were talking about. We don't really know yet.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I guess like it is a reveal. Like I am aware of that, but I guess I feel like on one hand they could have played it up more on like is it her or I was so glad they weren't gonna do something stupid of how like it was her, but she doesn't know it. Like the fucking like the duality of her. Like she gets like she goes to sleep and the other half takes like a force ghost takes control of her body. Like because I wouldn't put it past them doing some trash like that, but they didn't, which is good.
Jim, how do you know that? How do you know they're not doing that?
Because they have shown they've cut to the other character, although I guess they could unravel this. They have shown
Had the
where
two been in the same room with anyone else? No, they have not. And
But
I was
they-
searching the Acolyte Tyler Durden theory, and I didn't find
Yeah.
anything. And I'm like, how? Like, granted, by the time you're watching this or listening to this, dear listener, episode 3 is out, and this could be completely debunked. But I did very much pick up on the fact that they're not in the same. I mean, they're in the same room, but only when no one else is observing them at
True.
the end of episode 2. Now, there's a long way to go. Maybe that'll be completely debunked, and I also hope they don't do that. But it feels like maybe that's the reveal they're going to build up to, because why do they have the same hair? I mean, they have slightly different hair, but why do they have the same hair, Jim? You know, if they don't even know each other exists, that's just one of the many, many hints that they might be the same person after all.
But doesn't something happen when she's in like holding or whatever? Like don't things happen while she's potentially like because there's a point where I'm sorry, which one's the good one again? OSHA's the good one, right?
Yeah.
Isn't OSHA in captivity when May is still kind of causing havoc out in public, like at the same time?
Possibly. See, I might have to do a closer rewatch to like timeline it, but also, you know, Westworld.
They could,
This could
yeah,
be
exactly.
80 years apart. Like who knows? Who knows? I again, I hope this is not the case, but I wouldn't rule it out that quickly, Jim. I agree that I was glad that they kind of got on with the reveal of like they're twins, right? This is the plot, and I'm like, okay, let's do this plot. But then there've been just a few hints. So in episode 2, for example, we have this other second Jedi Master. So Osha's on a quest to kill these 4 Jedi Masters or Jedi Knights, and kills obviously Carrie-Anne Moss, and then finds the second one in episode 2, has to poison him. He willingly takes the poison because he knows he done bad. So obviously the Jedi have done some fucked up shit in this world, or at least are partially responsible.
Yeah.
And then randomly she's just there. Like, oh, sorry, let me step back for a second. So the note I wrote down, and I'll read it verbatim. How the fuck does Osha arrive first to the second dead Jedi after meandering off after a Force ghost vision when they were heading straight for Torben? I don't know if that's his name.
I remember
but basically, they're
thinking-
in the building. They're going to the Jedi Master, and
Yeah.
they're already heading there. She wanders off randomly, finds his dead body. This fucker hasn't moved in 20 years. He's there meditating. Fucking, how is she there? And then Yord of the Yord Horde is there like, she didn't do it. I saw her walk up or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, maybe. But maybe the reason she's discovered there, sees her sister, no one else sees her, is because she's her fucking sister. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I did think that was bizarre because they're like, let's go to the room right now. And then she like lingers off and goes down a flight of stairs and she's there ahead of time. There is a part though where Vernestra, who's like the other Jedi that's working with Master Soul, where she does have a line of dialogue that's something like, you know, how could Osha have done this when she was with you on the planet or whatever, like when he goes to the planet where her ship captures. So
Yeah.
but don't get me wrong, what you're saying still they could still do. I mean, we've seen force projections before in Star Wars. You know, in The Last Jedi, Luke does force project himself to another planet, although I don't know if he necessarily interacts with things. So but yeah, I do think it's highly unlikely. I think they do try in these 2 episodes to be like, no, that's not the case. Things are happening when Osha's here and when May's here. But, you know, I could be eating crow in a few weeks, and this could be the thing where we're like, you know, when we thought this was going to be almost good, and then we were like, at least they didn't do this. Well, they did the thing that we thought they weren't going to do, and it sucked.
Yeah, and I'm not touting this as like, you know, I have a theory and I'm a genius. It's more like I hope that isn't it. I felt like so
Yeah.
that thing of her wandering off and then she's suddenly there was weird. I thought it was actually towards the end of the second episode that I started feeling like this might be the case, because they're like, we're gonna confront her. You stay here. Don't come with us. And then they have the confrontation with the sister, and we just get these shots of Osha standing in a hallway like, this is, I wish I was there, but I can't be. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like maybe it's happening. I don't know. And then they have a brief
Yeah.
confrontation at the end, but no one else is like there for that part. And bits like her wandering off and she arrives directly to, like, quicker than the people who were going directly to the Jedi Master, that type of stuff. There's been a few moments like that where I'm like, huh? That's how that happened? And that, as I said before, the spoiler warning, that could be building to a reveal, or it could just be kind of shitty storytelling. And it's not terrible in itself that there's a moment like that. I just felt like there were a few weird things like that it feels a bit like Mr. Robot Season 1. It feels a bit like Westworld Season 1, that you're trying to build up something like that. And I'm just like, maybe this shouldn't... I don't know, Jim. I don't know what to do with this. So anyway, 2 episodes down.
Yeah. I think it's unlikely, but I can't, even though I feel like the show's trying to rule it out, you're right. And we're not really basing it off of this show as much as we're basing it off our experience with other shows that have pulled this garbage off. So it puts us on high alert almost. But yeah, I mean, I really like the idea of the Jedi who, is hovering in, like in his own, like, I guess almost comatose type force state, but he also is protected by like a force field, if you will. I did think it was almost like they got off a little easy where he just willingly drinks the poison. I mean, I guess it does hammer home the idea that, oh, wow, they must have done some fucked up shit. There's some fucked up shit in the past that to cause someone to do that. I thought it was a little bizarre, although maybe it's hinting that there's more for the character of, is it Kimir? It's Qimir, who I love from...
I don't think they say his name. So
I had to
was
look it
also
up.
like, I don't know, Kimir? He's, the guy from The Good Place, right?
Yes, I loved him on The Good Place, and he's kind of May's, like, partner in crime. Like, they're both referencing, like, the master that they're serving, who, like I alluded to, is... You know, in classic Star Wars fashion, it's a man. Well, I guess couldn't say it's definitely a man, but it's a dark cloaked figure with a very deep voice that I'm sure will be revealed soon. But it's weird that unless it's a character thing where they're hinting at his power, because there's May kicks ass in every moment we see. She's always kicking ass, like in these 2 episodes, even to the point where she can't attack Torben, but she's doing cool ass moves to try to get through his force field. But then at a certain point, he like gets the jump on her to like warn her about the how the Jedi's there, and that kind of took me aback a little bit of how like he pulls her to the side to cover to like try to like it's almost like they tried to nerf May in the second half of the second episode to, I don't know, to make her more likable or not as much of a villain. At least that was my initial read. I didn't quite get that.
So I have two things on that. So my understanding of it initially was that Kimir, if that's how you say his name, is also like a student of the same master, right? So he's also got the same kind of cool force powers. And he's at one point in the episode discovered by the good guys, Master Saul and co. They're there, and he's basically lies his way out of it. He does give up May in that he's like, oh, she'll be back later. I don't care. I'm just supplying her with this or that. And like he does a good job of convincing them, but I don't think we as an audience are supposed to believe what he's saying there. Like he's clearly, to me at least, playing like a fool or whatever. But so basically I was like, okay, so they're both students of this master, though. I would say the one theory that did come up when I was searching was that he is the Sith Lord, or the Master, which would kind of make sense because a big part of it is May herself. She doesn't know who the big Sith bad guy is. And meanwhile, Kamir is there saying, oh, remember, you have to kill one of them without a weapon. And he's making the poison for her to use and like kind of giving a bit of Sith wisdom to her and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I could see how that would be. That wouldn't be a bad twist. Like they were the same person all along necessarily. I was just like, yeah, I guess he's the most likely candidate of the characters we've seen so far to surprisingly be the Lord that he's appears to be serving himself, you know?
Yeah. It's either going to be that or it's going to be, what's her name? Venestra. Like, because she's the other, like, Jedi that
she's the one with the green face paint?
Yeah. Yeah, that's giving the Master Soul, like, orders, kind of. And I guess it's just because, but naturally they're already hinting at the Jedi being involved in something dark that I'm just assuming someone there has nefarious purposes. Someone that's already within the council. But see, this is the fun of shows like this. The problem is, well, Jacob doesn't have as much fun with this type of stuff. If you listen to a lot of our shows,
really
you
don't.
know.
Yeah. I'm glad you know
do.
that about me.
I just as I was saying it, I remembered this. I have fun with this stuff, but I'm almost always let down at the same time. So, but at least in the moment, in these moments like this, I have fun speculating. I don't get as deep as like some of the Reddit crowd does, where they'll like take screenshots and circle things and point to this or think there's little messages. But I do like to play along and be like, who is it? Is it this person? Is it this person? So we'll have to see how it plays out. And if anything, we've talked about this show quite a bit. Even though we talked a little bit about the stuff around it as well, I think that's a good sign, if anything, that we're spending 40 minutes talking about it. If it was just, completely mid to bad, it would just be like, it was fine, which is kind of our opinion, but at least there's a little bit more to discuss.
Yes, and so it's a quick one on Venestra, the green alien. For some reason, I found her makeup / design distracting. Apparently, I can deal with goofy ass looking Muppet aliens, and I'm like, yep, that's real. But just that she had green face paint, I'm like, she just wipe your face off. That's not real.
Yeah.
And there's, clearly nefarious things are happening within the Jedi, and I had the thought of like, yeah, obviously, like the Jedi are bad, and then that's the obvious thing to do. And then I was like, oh yeah, like in most Star Wars media, the Jedi are not bad. It's only when they're secretly Sith, and the Sith are cartoonishly evil, mustache twirling, like, let's take over the world. That's when the Jedi are bad. But obviously, in a world where they're going around controlling people's mind, upholding the social order, basically space cops out there, like, and ACAB obviously is a thing. I'm like, oh yeah, we haven't had as much Star Wars media that's actually critiquing the Jedi for what they are and for what they do, because so many things about the Jedi are bonkers. Like all of the, like swearing off having relationships and all this stuff that's not in the original trilogy. That's just something they were like, oh yeah, their philosophy's kind of Eastern, let's make them like these monks or whatever, even though that wasn't necessarily part of being a Force user from the start. So we haven't seen as much media that actually critiques the setup of the Jedi, because the way the Jedi are set up in episodes 1 to 3 is not necessarily a good system for the general galactic populace. And we see a lot of that in this, where people are like, hey, don't control my mind, man. Like, what? Fucking Jedi are here again. And you're like, you know what? I think they're right. Fucking Jedi are here again. They're about to fuck up our shit. And they probably burned down fucking Osha and May's parents. So, we have that to look forward to.
Yeah. Fuck the Jedi. We hate the Jedi.
Yeah.
Anyways, I guess that's that. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we finish up here?
No, thank you for listening along to our Acolyte discussion. We're not going to do like breakdowns of every single episode, but I think this was great to like this is our first impression from the first couple episodes. We'll be able to check back in either like halfway through the season or even when the season's over, and we'll get deep into what we were right and wrong about. So we have that to look forward to. You can also send us your thoughts on The Acolyte or any of the other shows we discussed to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com, and we'll include you in the discussion. You can, of course, also leave a comment at youtube.com/showswhatyouknow. And I think that's the end of the rant. Find more from me at awesomepedia.org. Find more from Jim at jimandthem.com. And of course, we're on TikTok. God, we're all over the place, Jim. We are. Really, it's not hard to find us. Just search for us on the internet and you'll get there.
You could call us content creators if you felt so obliged. We are content creators.
Yes. Yes, I can no longer say that I'm not. So here we are. Filling the content slop into the trough, and here we go. Here's some more.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.
We are Shows What You Know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.